Hello and welcome to this webinar. We're just going to hang on for a second just for a few more attendees to actually come into the webinar. Hello and welcome to this Innova Systems webinar with me, Adam Rose. In this webinar, we're going to have a look at sheet metal costing within SolidWorks. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to run through and actually open up the costing template editor. It's the first place we start, and we get that from our start menu under the SolidWorks 2013 and under SolidWorks Tools, and you'll find the costing template editor available from there. It is a separate application, and you can actually run and create all your templates from here. So the first thing I need to do is either create a new template or open up an existing one. It's quite a long process to actually create a template, so I'm going to open an existing one and work from that. You'll see that having opened up this existing item, I'm just going to go ahead and first of all change the currency code. There are a lot of them available, so we can just put in Great British Pound in there and the currency name just below that. So having entered that information, we can then decide on how the currency is actually divided, whether it's a comma or a full stop. You will see that you can also change the units. All that is grayed out in this one. The units box is only available when you actually create a new item, so when you create a new template. The next thing to do is actually switch through and have a look at the materials available. We can choose from a number of materials by selecting from this drop-down list. You'll see that we've got the kind of materials we had available in the normal material editor when we apply them onto a part. And we've also got a range of items from sustainability and some DIN standard as well. I'm just going to go ahead and insert a new material into here so you can see the process, and it's just a fairly straightforward process of actually selecting the class, the material we want to go for, which I'm going to go for AISI 316. Okay, and then that gets added into the database. We define that within the costing template so that we can then use it when we actually go to cost our model. The next thing to do is actually have a look at the thicknesses available for those materials. You'll see that we've got a range of items available, and all the different materials that have been entered have a range of different thicknesses that we can choose from. What I'm going to do is manually enter this information by filtering down into this list by selecting the boxes at the top. And I can just filter down to the material I've just entered, and if I want to, a particular material thickness as well. It just makes it a little bit easier to actually add the information if half the boxes have already been filled in for us. So then I can go ahead and insert the thickness of that and a particular cost for that material at that size. And obviously we'd go through this process and insert a range of different sizes. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to insert 3 different sizes for this. And I'll finish this off with 3.5 in thickness. And obviously you can see that this process of actually building the template is quite a time-consuming one. So having entered in the actual materials and the kind of thicknesses we want to use, we then go through to the operations section of the template editor. We've got cuts, bends and library features, and then custom operations. The cuts are fairly straightforward. The first thing we're going to do is actually put in a method for cutting these parts. You'll see that there are a number of items selected already with a default selected, so that means it's automatically selected for most jobs that we actually insert in the costing wizard. We can then enter our own information in here. I'm going to just manually type in CNC punch in here. And for that particular machine, there would be a setup cost for using that, so we can enter that into this database as well. And if you want to, then you can insert particular cut methods that you tend to use. So we can also insert CNC punch in here as well. And whether there would be a particular setup cost for that as a cut method. Okay, so we entered that information in. We might want to scroll down the list and actually go ahead and filter down and apply those particular methods onto our materials. So I'll just filter down into the list, again selecting that material I chose out earlier on and a particular thickness that I want to work with. So I'm going to go for 1.5 there, and then select my CNC punch and a particular cost for actually using that item. Okay, and if you're a little bit unsure, you might want to just compare that to the available materials that we've got here. You can see the sort of range of prices you've got, and that will just give you some kind of guide as to when you're actually entering in information. So we can enter the information at this level as well. So I'll enter that one in a couple of times, again using that same process that I did before. I'm not going to go too far in actually creating the whole template. I just wanted to show a few of the methods. So we entered that information in, and we might then want to go into the bends section for the operations, and then we can insert a particular way of actually bending these sheet metal parts. Okay, so we might have some kind of break in there, and again there's going to be a setup cost for using that particular machine. If you're inserting a hem into your sheet metal design, there's going to be a particular machine that you use for that. We can just put in information in here to actually define the cost of using that. Okay, and possibly that might be actually a different cost to what we've got available there. And then again, we define that based upon the materials, the thicknesses that we've got available. The next area within the template editor is the library features box. Now within here we may want to actually go into SolidWorks and just have a look at the library features available. We've got a range of items within the forming tools box within your design library that you're likely to use on sheet metal designs. And all we do is we just go into here and we just select one of the parts that we'd like to use and enter it in then into our template editor. So we can then enter a name. I'm going to go for the circular emboss for this one. And again, a setup cost for using that particular item. And how that cost would be distributed over the range of items you're creating, whether it would be distributed over the total quantity, the lot size, or per part. We've then got to put in some kind of cost to actually use that item on each thickness of material as well. So much like we did before, we select those steels that I've just entered in there, AISI 316. And then I'll go for the thickness and the particular library feature that I want to use. Okay. What we can do after entering in all this information is go to the custom tab where we can actually enter in our own custom operations. You can see there's painting, anodizing, inspection. We might want to enter in a new item into here. Okay, and how that is actually applied onto the design. So you can see you can apply it to the whole part, particular weight on the faces of the model. I'm just going to go for the whole design and particular cost of using that item. Obviously, there's going to be an associated setup cost for this one as well, and how that cost will be divided. This always include box just allows us to automatically include it within every job we do or not. So it's almost like turning it on by default. If we turn on no there, we can manually select it when we come to create the costing tool, but it's not automatically chosen for us. So after we've gone through this process and actually set up the costing template, what we need to do is then save it away. So if I click the save button and just save it onto my machine, it will take you by default into the standard location for these, but you can save them wherever you want. I've just got a standard location I've set up earlier on, and I'm just going to specify to sort of override this file that I created. Okay, so I've gone through and actually created the costing template. The next thing I want to do is actually start using that template on a file that I'm going to create. Before we do that, we just want to make sure that SolidWorks is actually going to reference the right location to pick up those templates. If you're unsure of where those templates are referenced, you can go to your options menu, either under tools or options or this button at the top here. And we can go down to where it says file locations. And if we drop down this list, we've got the file locations for most things and where they're referenced within SolidWorks. And you'll see at this location here, we've got costing report template folder and the costing templates folder. And within here, we're just going to make sure that the location we've saved our template in is added into here, so that then when we actually create the part and we use costing with it, it'll be picked up automatically. So the next thing I'm going to do is just create a brand new model in here. Just go for a standard part design. I'm just going to create a simple sheet metal model on the front plane. Rather than actually drawing out this full sketch, I've created one earlier on just using a block. I've just saved that onto my machine, which I'm just going to drag onto this sketch right here and just drop it in place. Obviously, with the use of a block, we've just got to define so it doesn't rotate. So I'll just give it some sketch references, and that should be enough to hold it in place. So what I'll do now is just select the sketch and actually extrude that out. I'm building it using extrude first of all, so that I can then use convert to sheet metal. So I'll extrude out the simple shape of the design, and then on the sheet metal toolbar, using convert, I can then select my fixed face on the back of the design and any bends that I'm going to insert. You can then make sure our thickness is correct for what we want and just hit the tick on that one. And that will just create a simple sheet metal design for us. Okay, so at this point, actually creating the sheet metal design, I then want to go ahead and actually use the costing wizard on this. You'll find the costing wizard actually within SolidWorks on the evaluate toolbar. Okay, you see it on the right hand side here as costing. If we select it, it just boots itself up on the right hand side and we get the template editor. Okay, I'm just going to move this go to webinar thing out of the way. And you can see within here, we first need to choose the particular template we want to use. It's always a good idea to keep the item pinned out so it doesn't ever disappear when you're working with it. So the first thing I'll do is just pick out that sheet metal template I just used, and then a particular class of material. Okay, and that's picked it out automatically. If you haven't got the right size of material, it will give you a slight warning. The fact the model thickness is different to what you've selected. And you'll see it did sort of auto-select the right thickness for me. You then got the material cost for that item. You can adjust that at this point. We've then got to decide actually how we're going to measure this material, where we're going to measure it based upon a bounding box which fits around the model. And if you're not quite sure, you can preview that. Just to see there, the bounding box is a total outside border of the design if you're going to draw a box around its edges. Or we can go with the flat pattern area. Or possibly, if you're working a custom sheet area, you can also do that within this dimensions box. You can also insert a custom area if you want to as well, if you just know the area of the material. Bounding box is the one I'm going to go for though. Obviously then you can insert the quantity, the number of items you're inserting and actually creating for this design, and I'm going to go in 50 with there. Okay. If I scroll down to the bottom, the last box that we got at the very bottom there is markup or discount. If we tick that on, we can then apply some kind of markup onto the design. Okay, I'm going to insert a percentage of the total cost. I'm going to increase the total cost by 10%. And you'll see that at the bottom here, it's constantly calculating the design when we make these changes. You can see the cost has just increased by 10% there. But we've actually got the design at a point where we can set a baseline. And we do that by just clicking this button here. A baseline basically just goes through the design, analyzes the part fully, and then sets a figure which we can compare against as we're making changes to the model. Okay, so having made that first baseline figure, I'm then going to go ahead and actually insert some more features on here. Okay. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you what we've actually got to start off with. We've got the bends that we've inserted as a cut path around the outside there, and then the setups for those particular machines. On this side face, I'm going to insert a new feature using the whole wizard tool. Okay, so I'll select the face and just start the tool up. I'll go for a standard 10mm in diameter hole. I'm just going to set it through all. Okay, so I just need to define a position for that. Define it on this edge here and just turn that into construction. And then I'll just place my points around the corners of that. Obviously then we need some kind of sketch relations in this design to hold it in place. Okay, having entered all that information in, we can then go ahead and actually exit out of this tool. You see it's going to cut through both faces there. Okay, the cost hasn't automatically updated to that change, but as soon as we go over here on the right hand side and click in this lower right section, it will update the results and actually enter in those additional cut paths that we've got available now. Okay, you see the increase in cost there, and if I select any of these cut paths, you can see the price of those next to it. Okay, so any of these, if you decide that maybe they wouldn't be cut out with the laser tool, we can right click on any of these and just switch those over to another tool. So for example, we may want to insert and use the punch for those ones. Okay, and that item is then switched over. You can see the increase in cost there. But obviously you may want to cut that with the laser tool if it is much cheaper. It's obviously just not going to be as accurate for that one. So it does give you a good point to actually weigh up the design and make some good choices about how you're going to produce the model if we've got all the information in there like that. Okay, so the next feature I'm just going to add in, I'm going to keep the costing tool open, but I'm going to go to my design library and just pull in another sketch onto this face here. So just start a sketch on there and drag in this logo. I'll drop that on the front. Okay, we may want to add again some sketch relations on that, just very simply to hold it in place. And obviously, ideally, we'd add some kind of dimensions in there to position it as well. Just to save time, I'm just not going to add those. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just cut that through the model. If I link to thickness on this cut, it'll obviously just update with the actual thickness of the design. There we go. And again, go back to the costing wizard, and we've got to update the design by just clicking this bottom right hand corner. And we should find that then the cost will update nicely. Okay, so it just updates the results there. And you can see there's a 6% increase. There's a breakdown right at the bottom here of the actual costs, the material, manufacturing, and the kind of markup we've got on there. Okay, so it just nicely presents the information to you. If you do want to get information out of the model a bit more than we've got here, we can actually generate a report. And the first thing I'll do before generating the report is save the design, because we need to do that. So I'll just save it over an existing one. Okay, and then it will let me actually generate a report within SolidWorks. So it takes a second. It takes all the information we've already sort of created within this costing wizard, and it will just present it to you nicely within a Word document. Okay, you can see it's going through actually generating some of the previews we'll get within this costing wizard. It will present us with some pictures and then some of the data that we're using here. So eventually that will pop up. It's not actually come straight up in front of the wizard, but you do have to click in the bottom window there and it will come up in there. So we've got the model name, the quantity, and all the kind of straightforward information like this cost estimation and the baseline figure. Okay, you can then see the cut paths that we've got generated and the price for each one of those. Okay, and any kind of bends that we've inserted there. So it does quite nicely break down the design so you can just analyze it and just take the information in. You see that at the moment, this costing template that's been used here is quite a blank template. I've not actually filled this in terms of the company logo and things like that. If you do want to go in and actually edit these, they are quite easy to find. You can go in on your machine in the SolidWorks installation directory and dig those out. You'll have to go into your C drive and into your program files where SolidWorks is installed. That'll be SolidWorks Corp. Then into SolidWorks, and in the SolidWorks directory where you've got the install, you then go to Lang, English, and you'll find in this location those costing reports. So if I just drag those out, you can see there we've got one for multi-body, one for machining, and there's also one for sheet metal. And each one of those you want to go in and make changes to, obviously, to update it to your company standards. Okay, so obviously we can save that away and then send it through to someone. This button just next to generate report just lets us send the report straight away rather than actually just creating the report. Okay. And if you do want to make any updates, you can just press that generate report button again, and it will just update to the changes you made. Okay. So it will work quite well for that kind of thing. What I'm going to do now is just to close down this design. I'm going to show you how costing works with a multi-body design, and we'll go in a bit more detail within this left-hand side. So I'll open up a recent document that I've got created. Okay, within here I've got various different items in the cut list. We've got 2 sheet metal designs, and then we've got 3 bolt-in items here. Okay, what I'm going to do first of all is apply material to this particular item, okay, by right-clicking and edit the material. I'm doing this just to show you that it will actually pick that up automatically within the costing wizard. So I'll apply that to material we were using before, a particular steel. And then what I'm going to do is start up the costing wizard again from the evaluate toolbar. With a multi-body part like this one, what it does is it actually first of all asks us what we want to do, whether we want to insert the items as a sheet metal part or a particular machine part within there. Okay, we can also insert custom data. It's all based upon a template again. So what I'm going to do is actually generate a template. You can see there's one that's created from the sheet metal and one that's created from machining. So again, we go back to that costing template editor. And we can either go in this bottom right hand corner, or we can launch it from this button just here. Okay, so within here I'll just open up or create a new document. If I create a new one, we can actually choose from 3 different standards. We've got multi-body, sheet metal and machined. We need to create the machined and sheet metal in order to create a multi-body one. You'll see what I mean in a second. So I'll select main template for multi-body parts. Okay, it opens up the design, and then I can enter in my units and the currency again. Okay, we can then go ahead and actually choose the 2 templates that we've already created. So we'll have a look at the machining template side of things and actually creating machining costing wizards within a later webinar. But I'm just going to first of all choose that sheet metal template I created earlier on. Okay, I've already got machine one that I've created, but I'll insert that into here as well. Do be aware of the fact that if our units don't match up with these, then you will get an error. Just enter that in again. Okay, so you will have to make sure that your units and your currency code just match up. What we can do within this wizard is enter in a custom operation. That's the only thing we actually get the operation ability to add in. So we may want to add in the ability to add a paint job into there based upon the part or face in the model. Okay, and a particular cost for that. And whether there's a setup cost for this particular operation. And again, how that cost is distributed. I'm not going to always include that. I'll leave it as we had it before. But then I can just save this template again onto my machine. So I'll click Save As. Okay, and I'm going to save it in my standard location that I had earlier on. I'll just override that existing one. Okay, so having created the template, back in this right hand side here, we should have the item available to select from. Okay, and then once we've chosen the item, it should choose for us the 2 templates we want to use. Then what we need to do is go ahead and actually select what these bodies are. So you can see some of them have got question marks next to them. They're the items that are sort of bought in for this particular operation. It hasn't automatically picked on one on whether it would be machined or sheet metal parts, because obviously they probably wouldn't be either. What we do with these is we can either exclude those from the design, so I can just go ahead and exclude from the model, or if we have got a part that it hasn't automatically picked up on, we can pick up on the type of body from this box here. So if it is machined, we can select it from there. I will apply a custom cost into this power socket within the design. Okay, and that's then applied onto the model. Once you've actually either applied a custom cost or excluded particular parts from the design, you can begin your cost estimation. It'll start running through the model. Okay, it can take a little bit more time with the multi-body part to actually run through and fully estimate the costs there. Obviously, it's working with those sheet metal designs. We'll do a full sort of cost estimation on the model, and it should give you some fairly accurate results, which we can then sort of break down into and actually analyze in more detail based upon each body. So you can see that it's just about finished the process. Okay, so now that it's actually given us the results, you can see the costs that it's actually generated for the model. We've then got it broken down on the left hand side into each body that we've inserted and any custom items we've applied a cost to. Okay, all of these items, no cost assigned. We can assign a cost to those individually. So you could include in costing at this point if you wanted to. If you want to analyze each body within greater detail within the costing wizard, we can just double click on those to actually go into the particular body we want to work on. Okay, it will just isolate that body for us to have a look at. Obviously, we then want to make sure that our material thicknesses are correct and things like that to make sure we're getting an accurate cost estimation. Okay. There's particular operations we've got in here. We've got particular bends, available cut paths, and then setup operations. Some items have had no cost assigned to them. You can see it's these countersunk emboss features on the base of the model here. You can either just drag those manually into each box you want to apply them to, or we can simply right click and apply a cost override onto that particular item. And that just lets us manually insert a cost for that particular job. Okay. When we do that, it just applies that feature into the countersink emboss library features folder. Okay, and you can see a little asterisk next to the item to show that the cost has been applied there. If we want to insert any kind of custom operations on this particular job, we can click this button here, and then you'll see that there's the ability to add painting operations or any of the items we've inserted earlier on. We can also add a new operation in there if we want to as well. I'm going to go for painting on this particular job. We can either go via all faces or we can go via selected faces. What we may want to do is just clear this box and manually just select tangency on the outside there. That will just select all the outside faces of the model if you're working with a sheet metal design. Okay, so we can then apply that cost onto the model. The custom operation is then shown in this box just here, and if you're finding the price isn't quite right for any of the operations you've inserted because your template's not quite correctly configured yet, you can right click on the item and apply a cost override to manually sort of change that over into something else. Okay, so that then is configured and reduced in cost slightly. You can see again an asterisk next to that to show that it's a custom item that we've configured there. So if we want to go back to the overall design, we can just click this button up here and it will take us back into the model, which then we can obviously go into interrogate the other part of the model. Okay, so it works in a similar way. The only difference is we can actually go into each one of those bodies and interrogate them one by one. So what I'm going to do now is just to manually close this down. I'm just going to show you some of the things you can do with the costing wizard actually when it comes to assembly models. So I'm going to open up an existing assembly model that I created earlier on. Okay, within this design, each one of the parts has had the costing wizard applied to it. Okay, and there's been a cost applied to each one of those. That's been added then into the custom properties menu on each part. So it has a costing item added into there. We can then pull that through at assembly level to view that within bill of materials or possibly within the assembly visualization tool. If you haven't used this before, it is quite a useful tool just to interrogate the design at assembly level. Obviously we can start it up at any time. Just expand it so we can see it a bit better there. All right, so we got the total cost there, the quantity, and whether we're making or buying the piece. You can see there the individual costs and the most expensive one shown at the top. If we want to actually get a visual look at how the model is costed up, we can click this left-hand side here, and it will apply colors onto the design for the most expensive and the least expensive there, and we can adjust those to adjust the gradient between the two. Okay, or if we want to, we can click and insert an additional color by clicking this left hand side here to add a slider, and then we can insert our own. Okay, and that will just give us a full range of colors to actually break down the cost into there. It becomes quite a visual design then. So this total cost is just a custom property that's been added into each one of the parts. But you can add any items into here that you want to simply by right clicking to add a column, and we can adjust that to anything we want. So we can have a look at the cost compared to the mass of the model. Okay, or we can adjust any of the particular items that we've already added in here. Okay, if you want to turn off this overlay of the grid, you can actually click this button at the top. And if you want to break down the design even more to have a look in a finer detail, you can actually filter down into this list to actually pick out the individual pieces and see the costs for those within the model and which one's the most expensive. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good idea of how you can use costing within all levels in SolidWorks, and specifically for the sheet metal designs. You can see that most of the work is actually put in within the template editor and actually building that up. Once you've got a good template built up, your costing wizard will work well. But if you haven't got all the items added in, you can manually apply custom costs to particular parts of the design. So thanks very much for watching. I'll just point out our future webinars. We've got one on the 28th on advanced technical publications, one on Scan to 3D, and one on machining costs. Okay. And hopefully that's been a useful webinar for you. Thanks very much for watching.